She's 68, still working and barely scraping by, because almost every dollar she makes goes straight to her son and daughter-in-law. They don't pay rent, they don't pay their own bills, and when I finally stepped in to stop it, they called me the villain. 4 stories today about people who decided someone else's generosity, patience, or bloodline meant they were owed something. My brother and his wife just had a baby. Genuinely happy news. What I didn't know, until my mom mentioned it in passing, is that they've been living in her old house this entire time without paying her a cent in rent. I'd assumed they were at least covering property taxes and basic upkeep. They weren't covering anything. They're not lazy. Cost of living in New York is brutal, I get that. But the real issue came out when my mom told me my sister-in-law had decided not to go back to work after having the baby. On my brother's income alone, they simply cannot afford their own housing. My mom, meanwhile, has been quietly footing everything. She finished their basement to give them more space, and she's still paying their car payment, phone, internet, and toll pass, on top of getting no rent at all. If I weren't helping her with her own bills, she'd be at risk of losing her own home. When I brought it up to her, she basically told me to handle it however I saw fit, which told me she'd never be able to say no to them herself. So I did. I sat down with my brother and told him this arrangement had to change, since Mom simply can't sustain it. I even asked why he doesn't stay home with the baby instead, since his wife, a nurse, earns significantly more than he does as a teacher. He said she wants to be the one home. I told him that's fine, but they can't afford that choice on their own. And right now they're not affording it on their own. Mom is. Nothing changed for weeks, so I followed through. Starting next month, the car gets sold, since it's in Mom's name anyway, and the internet, phone, and toll pass all get canceled. For the rent, I've actually started speaking with a landlord-tenant attorney about setting up a real legal lease between them and my mom. Now they're furious, accusing me of being petty, and even claiming I'm willing to make my own niece homeless. That was never the intent. But my mom has worked her entire life and has no reason to still be struggling in her late 60s, especially when the only reason she's struggling is because everything she earns goes straight to subsidizing them. If you are the one paying someone's bills, you get a say in how sustainable that actually is. That's just how it works. That's a slow financial drain. This next one is about a marriage that quietly fell apart for 20 years, and the ending nobody in the family saw coming, or wanted to accept. I got married at 18, against my dad's advice, completely certain I knew better. Over the next 20 years, my wife's family became the center of everything. Every holiday, every birthday party held at her parents' house, with mine invited more out of courtesy than anything else. Inside our own home, it eventually felt like there were 2 separate households, her and the kids as one unit, and me as something else entirely. My preferences got overridden constantly. I couldn't even lock my own bedroom door without being told it stressed the kids out. The week my youngest left for college, I filed for divorce. We didn't have much to split beyond our cars, so I walked away with almost nothing material. And 2 kids who, by that point, had never really considered my side of the family part of theirs. My ex says I blindsided her, that she had no idea I was unhappy. I've asked her what exactly she thought 14 years of ongoing arguments meant, or the repeated suggestions we go to couples counseling. I'm 41 now, starting over completely. I found a better job almost immediately. I've got a rescue dog I adopted the week I left. And I've built a whole new circle of friends. Her side of the family and our kids think I'm the villain for never properly communicating that I was unhappy before just leaving. I'd argue I communicated it for years and simply stopped being heard. Family isn't the only place people overstep. Sometimes it's just the guy at the next desk. Now, this one's a little lighter, but no less satisfying. There's a guy at my office. Sweet, a little scatterbrained. Everyone affectionately calls him Goldfish George, who has one incredibly specific bad habit. He takes things directly out of my hands without asking. Gum, popcorn, whatever I happen to be holding. I've told him more than once, if I hand it to you, that's a gift. If you grab it out of my hand, that's just taking it. He always agrees, always apologizes, and always does it again. It came to a head last week when he snatched a pen literally from between my fingers mid-signature, leaving a pen mark across the form I was filling out. I decided that the next time it happened, I'd simply snatch the item straight back the moment he grabbed it, just so he could feel exactly how irritating it is. The test came in the break room the next day. He grabbed a communal bag of chips out of my hands. I immediately took it back and said, "Ask, please, George, we've talked about this," then held it out for him properly. He grabbed it so aggressively out of pure frustration that the bag split open everywhere. He told me I made him feel like a child. Maybe, but I'm not sure there was a version of this lesson that wasn't going to land that way eventually. Last one. And this is the one where an entire family get involved over something that should have been a simple, private decision. A baby's name. My wife and I are expecting our first daughter soon. My wife's younger sister has always been the baby of her family in every sense. Babied, overprotected, and by my honest assessment, genuinely spoiled. She's 22 and still capable of full meltdowns when things don't go her way. At her own wedding, she cried for half an hour because her shoes were a slightly different shade of white than planned. Shoes nobody could even see under her dress. At a family dinner recently, she mentioned almost casually how nice it would be to have a niece named after her. I let it go in the moment. Later that night at home, my wife told me she actually wanted to go through with it, that it would mean so much to her sister. We have a standing rule between us that any name needs both of us to agree, and I said no. My wife respected that and told her sister no herself. That's when it escalated. My wife started getting pressured by text to reconsider. When she held firm, the messages turned nasty. And eventually, I started getting texts too. Then phone calls from both my mother-in-law and her sister directly, just repeating "why not" over and over. Eventually, I snapped and told them both plainly that I would never name my daughter after someone I consider a spoiled brat, and that this exact phone call was a perfect example of why. Now her whole family treats me like the villain of the story. And I keep getting updates about how upset her sister has been ever since. My wife agrees they've gone too far, but still wants me to smooth things over. I'm not sure I want to. 4 stories, 1 pattern. People who mistook someone else's kindness, patience, or love for something they were entitled to. Which one would have made you snap first? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe for a new story every day. See you tomorrow.